Support for the Leadoff on WGLT and WGLT.org comes from the Central Illinois Regional Airport, offering one stop to worldwide destinations from Central Illinois with daily flights on Delta Airlines to Atlanta. Close, convenient, CIRA. More at CIRA.com.
Mobile home residents across the country are organizing as private equity moves into their parks and raises rent. It's one of the things you need to know to start your day for Wednesday, November 19th. I'm Ryan Denham, and this is WGLT's The Leadoff. Now let's lead off with huge compensation agreements for the CEOs of Rivian and Tesla, which may not be excessive even though they range from several billion to $1 trillion. WGLT's Charlie Schlenker explains.
The dean of Illinois State University's College of Business says the recent $4.6 billion contract for Rivian CEO R.J. Scaringe has not raised too many eyebrows. A.J. Samant says the markets seem to like it.
The price of Rivian stock actually went up about 6%. So the public perception of that compensation package is favorable.
And Samant says the stock price of Tesla didn't budge much at all after Elon Musk's $1 trillion package came out. Samant says for Scaringe to get the total amount of money in the Rivian contract, he'd have to increase the value of the company a lot. He says the board of Rivian set the targets high, but they're not fantasies.
They have employed professional analysts. They have forecast possible sales over the next 10 years. And based on all of that, they have come up with these numbers. I would not look upon these compensation packages as excessive necessarily.
And he says it's not solely about the money.
At that level of net worth, I think it's more an issue of continuing their legacy, continuing control over the product that they see as their creation.
Samant also says Scaringe and Musk are unlikely to cash in and sell the stock they may get because shareholders don't like to see that. He says the contracts for CEOs of companies that are new or in developing industries often have stock options in them. Contracts for leaders of more established companies tend to focus more on base salaries. For the Leadoff, I'm Charlie Schlenker.
Here's some other stories we're following in the WGLT newsroom. Starting today, Illinois residents can store their driver's license or state ID on their iPhone's wallet. Secretary of State Alexi Giannoulias says residents can pull up their IDs on their phones or Apple Watches and present them in person and online. Allegiant says it's adding a twice-weekly nonstop flight from Bloomington's Central Illinois Regional Airport to Mesa, Arizona, near Phoenix, starting February 13th. Those seasonal flights will run on Mondays and Fridays. And Senator Tammy Duckworth has fired a Belleville-based staffer at the Department of Homeland Security accused of misrepresenting himself as an attorney for a man detained by immigration agents. You can find more on these stories at WGLT.org. All this week on Sound Ideas, you've been hearing about the business practices at Oakwood. That is a private equity-backed company that now owns 5 manufactured home parks in Bloomington-Normal and is raising rent and fees at all of them. WGLT student reporter Ben Howell gathered some advice for how mobile home residents can protect themselves.
Twin City mobile home park owner Oakwood is part of a larger trend of manufactured home parks being taken over by private equity. In response, advocates for affordable housing and legal experts have risen to meet the needs of people living in those homes. Erin Duncan is the supervising attorney of Bloomington's Prairie State Legal Services. Last year, she filed a now settled lawsuit against Oakwood on behalf of 2 residents, accusing it of unfair business practices. One of the key laws she uses in these kinds of cases is the Mobile Home and Landlord Tenant Rights Act.
And that's when they're looking for their rights related to rent increases, assessment of fines and fees, some about eviction, the right to list their home for sale without interference by the mobile home park, utility billing practices, park maintenance.
Another is the Illinois Consumer Fraud and Deceptive Business Practices Act.
So when we see misrepresentations about tenant rights or things like the unilateral imposition of fees and fines that were not originally in a tenant's lot lease, those raise big red flags for us as legal aid lawyers. And so we continue to look into remedies for unfair landlord and park owner practices under several different laws.
Just this year, the Landlord Retaliation Act also went into law, prohibiting increases in rent, decreasing services, and more if a tenant, for example, joins a tenants' union. The laws and legal precedent are important resources for tenants inquiring about possible illegal practices by their landlord. Duncan says getting individual advice is important, as the information is also confusing.
Sometimes we see stuff floating around online, or people get information that is actually maybe related to a Chicago, particular ordinance that doesn't apply downstate. And so there's a lot of misinformation floating out there, and it's really important that people understand the rights in their particular situation.
There are important differences between a mobile home lease and an apartment lease. Duncan says one example is that the lease of a mobile home is automatically renewable.
And so if you sign an initial lease, you lease up on certain terms, you say, these are the fees or fines that I would agree to pay. Here's essentially the terms that you originally lease up on. You should have a right to rely on those terms without unilateral changes to them by the park.
State law requires mobile homeowners to give a 90-day notice for a rent increase.
But to be clear, that 90 days can't come in the middle of your lease term. So if you're in the middle of your lease term and you get a rent increase notice that says in 90 days your rent's going to go up, that wouldn't be legitimate unless it's aligned with the time when your lease is renewing.
Another route mobile home tenants have tried to take to stand up for themselves is organizing among their neighbors. Organizations do exist to advise residents in those situations. Dave Anderson is the executive director of the National Manufactured Homeowners Association.
If you stick your head up and start organizing, you're not just risking a place to live, you're risking the home you own.
This is especially true of low or fixed income individuals. Anderson's advice?
My experience is that you get the best results in terms of the policies you want and the best messaging on your issues if you become your own advocate, and especially if you can set up an organization to support your interests over time.
Another powerful ally is the Illinois Attorney General's office, or the law firm of the state.
And they're complaint-driven agencies, like a lot of agencies are, that the number of things they could get involved in far exceeds the resources they have.
Therefore, Anderson says the Attorney General has to be recruited carefully and correctly.
Probably not a great time to talk about how if your next door neighbor only fixed their skirting, there wouldn't be so many stray cats living underneath their home. Save that issue for another day.
Anderson said the Attorney General can also provide language guides and fact sheets for residents regarding their rights. With reporting from Ryan Denham, I'm Ben Howell.
You can hear more on this story and the rest of our series about Oakwood, a mobile home park owner here in Bloomington-Normal. That's at 5 o'clock tonight and every weeknight on Sound Ideas. And you can catch up on the series at WGLT.org/mobilehomes. That is it for today. I'm Ryan Denham. The show is produced by Cheyenne Brown. You can subscribe to the Leadoff on the NPR app or wherever you get your podcasts.